Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about my new book, my last book of a trilogy series, my book on Pluto. I just completed, and this was over the course of really the lockdown with COVID. Since last February, I've written 3 books, and the first one that came out is Neptune, which is Secrets, Illusions, and Scandals. I've had so many experiences with Neptune over the course of my lifetime as an astrologer. I had to write a book. Trust me, it is about illusions and scandals and secrets. And then I wrote my second book on Uranus, which Uranus radical changes and awakenings. And this was the planet that got me into astrology. So those are my first 2 books, and I just finished. It's available on Amazon. I don't even have a copy yet of Pluto, but I wanted you to know as soon as it came out, because so many astrologers, they relate to Pluto. And I know that Vedic astrologers don't use the outer planets. This was why I felt a need to write books on the outer planets to incorporate in a chart, even though in the Vedic system, we will not use the outer planets in terms of house rulers. But I see the outer planets as affecting us as a collective unconscious. They affect us all as a mass consciousness. They affect our psychology, how we feel about things, and how our generations in this world are all one, because the outer planets move so slow, especially Pluto. They form generations of people. And these groups of people think within a certain domain. And it's just what happens in the transpersonal world about how our generation feels and the experiences. Because the outer planets are such a powerful, powerful predictive tool, they really do direct the masses and what's going on globally. And throughout this book on Pluto, I give all the examples of when Pluto was in certain signs. Pluto has an orbit that takes so long in a sign, but it is an elliptical orbit. So at some points it stays in a sign for 12 years. It was actually at one point around the 90s in year 2000, it was within the orbit of Neptune. But because of its elliptical orbit, it stayed in a sign about 12 years at that point. And then at other times, it stays in a sign for 30 years. So it really has a long-term effect. And because of its slow motion, it really has an effect on us. The slower a planet moves, the deeper and longer lasting its effects. So Pluto, and because Vedic astrologers do not use the outer planets, I call this a neo-Vedic approach, meaning this is something new, but the outer planets so deeply affect our natal planets in our chart. And I find that their placements next to a natal planet really changes that energy. So let's talk about Pluto for a minute. Pluto was first discovered around sometime in the 1930s. During this time, whenever a planet is discovered, it brings into awareness and consciousness something to humanity. And Pluto, around the time of the 30s that it was discovered, guess what was discovered? Guess what came into the confines of humanity? Atomic energy. Also at that time, Pluto rules dictatorships, power, control. As the title of my Pluto book is, Pluto, Control, Power, Surrender, and Rebirth. That is the title of my Pluto book. And that is what it's all about. Massive control. During the 1930s was when the mafia gangs were in control. It's when dictators took over the world. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini. This was what Pluto brought into our being. And Pluto is relative in many ways to what the 8th house is all about. What is the 8th house? All those definitions are the same for Pluto. It deals with death, rebirth, transformation, change, and psychology, wanting to understand the deeper aspects of who we are, why we are, birth and death, what's beyond this world. That's Pluto energy. It's even in Greek and Roman mythology, the god of the underworld, Pluto and Hades. And even the whole story, the myth behind Hades taking Persephone and taking Persephone down to the underworld. There's some very deep connotations with that, with sexual abuse or rape. You're going to see examples of this in this Pluto book, because the 8th house and Pluto do deal with sexual experiences, for good or bad. That's what it is truly difficult to deal with. But let me tell you one thing about Pluto that I learned that maybe, and I know everyone else will have this experience. When you go through a Pluto transit, and by the way, this book will have Pluto has many famous people in the book that have Pluto tightly conjunct a personal planet in their chart and what it means. And of course, it's going to be exemplified in whatever house it's in. But this is Pluto conjunct natal planets. It goes through all of the conjunctions of different planets, what it would mean. And I take this to an even deeper level with looking at when Pluto transits your natal planets and what houses it's in. But it stays in a house forever. But when it hits a planet, exactly, let me tell you, you will never forget it. Because when Pluto crosses over any planet in your chart, it's there for a year and a half or more. It will cause a deep transformation. During that time, you're going to feel like it is the worst thing that ever happened to you. You're going to feel like this is the worst experience ever. It's gut-wrenching. But guess what happens? Pluto always eliminates that which is not growth-producing. You may be totally attached to something. You don't want to let go of it. But because it's not growth-producing, you gotta let it go, and Pluto forces you to let these things go. A couple of years later, you look back and you go, thank God that happened, because I couldn't be who I am or where I am if that hadn't been eliminated in my life. That's the power of Pluto, the transformational change that actually deals with the rebirth and the destruction in our lives that we have to go through. Remember, Pluto rules death. It's a god of the underworld. And so many times, we go through many deaths within a life. I'm not saying that you physically die, but you feel like you died within. That's Pluto. It is enormously transformational. You have to die to one form to be born to another. That's the symbology of the phoenix. The ashes to the rebirth. And that's what Pluto is about. It's tough dealing with Pluto, but it is a part of life, just like our death and our rebirth. This is what Pluto's all about. Don't miss my new book. This was quite the experience regurgitating the energy and effects of Pluto. I even share some of my personal experiences in this book, and let me say, it wasn't easy. So with that, I'd like to close. Don't forget, you can find all three of my books, Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, all on Amazon. Go on Amazon, and I'll have the link down below here. But go on to Amazon and search my name or the titles of the books. You'll see all of my books. This was my 10th book. And I have to say, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. It's not like me to do that, but I'm going to take a little break after kicking out 3 books in less than a year. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information on me, go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Don't forget to check out my new jewelry line. And if you would like to learn Vedic astrology, join our community of Vedic astrologers. It's really amazing. It's one of my greatest accomplishments to form this University of Vedic Astrology. Check it out, University of Vedic Astrology.com. And don't forget, we're starting a brand new semester, beginning semester in January. And we'd love to have you on board. Thank you.